They say love can make a man do foolish things, but in the city of Accra, one man took foolishness to a level never seen before. His name was Kweku Owusu, a man who could count coins faster than he counted blessings. He wasn't poor. No, he was just allergic to spending. If you ever saw him in a restaurant, he'd wait for someone else to pick up the bill. At weddings, he'd dance close to the buffet but never bring a gift. And when it came to love, he believed affection was free, but marriage was too expensive. So when Kweku finally found the woman of his dreams, the beautiful, soft-spoken Ama, he did what no man had ever dared. He borrowed her dowry and used it to pay her bride price. This is not just the story of a stingy man. It's the story of pride, pretense, and how one city wedding became the biggest scandal of the year. The city never slept. From dawn till dusk, its heartbeat throbbed through traffic horns, impatient bus conductors, and gospel songs echoing from tiny speakers at every junction. In the middle of all this chaos lived Kweku Owusu, a man who could calculate change faster than a cashier but had never calculated kindness in his life. They said Kweku could find a discount even in a dream. And if he ever dreamed of giving, it was only because someone had mistakenly added him to a church WhatsApp group. Kweku worked in a small accounting firm tucked between a stationery shop and a tailor's kiosk. His job was to balance books for clients, and he did it well, not because he loved accuracy, but because it taught him new ways to avoid spending. He kept his old smartphone in a cracked case even though he could afford a new one. He argued with trotro drivers over one cedi. He'd rather walk 10 blocks than pay for a ride. When coworkers ordered lunch, he'd smile and say, "Oh, I already ate before coming," but everyone knew he hadn't. He didn't buy lunch. He waited for office birthdays because he knew someone would bring jollof and fried chicken. That's when Kweku's generosity suddenly appeared. "Let me help you pack some of this, my sister. You shouldn't carry all the leftovers alone." He owned 3 shirts, rotated carefully, Monday blue, Wednesday white, Friday checkered. He washed them every weekend, dried them on his balcony, and ironed them with the same precision he used to count his money. His neighbor once joked, "Kweku, even mosquitoes can't survive in your house. There's nothing to eat." He only smiled and replied, "Exactly. That's how I save on mosquito spray." Kweku lived in a one-room apartment in Dansaman. The walls were bare except for a clock that didn't tick and a mirror that showed how content he looked in his emptiness. He had one plastic chair, one plate, one spoon, and a single cup that read, "Property of Kweku, do not touch." His landlord, Auntie Mabel, often teased, "Ah, Kweku, when you finally marry, where will your wife sit?" And Kweku would reply, "If she truly loves me, she'll stand." He kept his electricity usage minimal, one dim bulb, fan on half speed. He never used his gas stove fully. Instead, he warmed food on the leftover heat from yesterday's cooking. To him, every flick of the switch was a cedi flying away. When it came to dating, Kweku treated romance like a budget plan. He'd text a woman good morning, but if she replied good morning dear, he'd feel she owed him emotional interest. Once he took a lady to a restaurant. His first date in 2 years. He studied the menu like a contract and said, "Let's order water first. You know, hydration is important before heavy meals." He kept the waiter waiting for 15 minutes until the lady herself offered, "Let's just share a plate." He grinned, pretending it was romantic teamwork. After that day, he saved her number as too expensive. Do not text. Yet, in the city's fast rhythm, appearances mattered. Kweku wore clean clothes, polished shoes, and carried himself like a man of means. On social media, he posed beside cars that weren't his, captioning, "Stay humble even when you have everything." His followers admired him. The perfect gentleman online, the perfect miser offline. He had an entire philosophy about money. The poor spend to look rich, he would say, and the rich save to stay invisible. But Kweku was neither poor nor rich, just trapped between pride and paranoia. In the compound house, everyone had a Kweku story. One evening, a child's football shattered his window. The boy's mother rushed to apologize. Kweku calmly walked out, inspected the broken glass and asked, "So who will pay for the air that escaped from my room before I noticed the hole?" The entire compound burst into laughter, but Kweku was serious. Another time, during a funeral in the neighborhood, people were donating small amounts for the family. Kweku walked up with a calculator. "Please, can I confirm what others have given first?" When told the average was CW 10, he gave CW 8 and said, "Inflation adjustment." Then came the night that changed his rhythm. The night Kweku dreamt of a wedding. In the dream, he was standing before a bride dressed in gold, smiling at him. Drums thundered, guests cheered, and a voice whispered, "Spend or lose." He woke up sweating. "Spend or lose," he muttered. "Lose what?" He looked around his empty room. No food, no extra chair, not even a spare pillow. For the first time, the silence felt loud. He brushed off the dream and went to work. But as fate would have it, that very morning she walked in. Amma was new at the firm. Beautiful, elegant, with the kind of smile that could melt metal. She'd just been transferred from another branch. The moment she greeted the team, even the office printer seemed to work better. Kweku, who normally kept to himself, suddenly volunteered to help her set up her desk. "Ah, no need to strain your hands. Let me do it," he said, gently lifting a stapler like it was gold. Amma thanked him warmly, unaware that this was the same man who once argued over a shared stapler refill. Over the following days, he began showing unusual interest. He walked her to the bus stop, offered to escort her for safety, though the station was beside his own house. Amma was kind-hearted, sincere, and humble. She laughed at his jokes and complimented his discipline with money, not knowing it wasn't discipline but disease. Kweku began texting her daily, but even in love he budgeted carefully. He called only when he had bonus credit. He sent voice notes instead of long messages, to save data. Still, Amma saw him as responsible. He dressed neatly, spoke intelligently, and never partied recklessly. He was everything her mother had prayed for, at least on the surface. When she fell sick one weekend, Kweku visited with a single apple wrapped in nylon. "You know they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away," he said proudly. She smiled weakly, thinking it was sweet. Kweku attended weddings only for food. He'd show up late, right when the buffet opened. He'd praise the couple loudly so no one suspected his motive. "Ah, see, love, God bless this union," he'd shout, scooping extra meat while pretending to bless the food. He was also known for borrowing, but in clever ways. If a friend bought new perfume, Kweku would say, "Just spray small for me before we go out. We can't both waste money." He'd walk around smelling like success, at no cost. Amma's friends noticed. "This man doesn't spend a cedi on you," one said, "not even flowers." But Amma defended him. "He's just careful. Not everyone shows love with money." Kweku loved that. He finally found a woman who didn't pressure him financially, but even then he couldn't resist cutting corners. When he took Amma on a date, he chose a cafe that offered buy one get one free. When she mentioned ice cream, he smiled. "You know sugar affects productivity. Let's stay focused on our future." One night he dreamt again. Same golden wedding, same whisper. "Spend or lose." This time he saw Amma's face. He woke up trembling. "Spend? Never," but destiny, as stubborn as a city taxi driver, had other plans. Weeks later, after work, Amma and Kweku shared a trotro ride home. The vehicle stopped in traffic, and outside, a man sold roses. Amma smiled at the sight. "They're lovely," she whispered. The vendor leaned in. "Only 5 cedis, boss." Kweku shook his head. "5? For something that will die tomorrow?" The silence between them grew heavier than the traffic. Amma looked out the window, hiding her disappointment. But as Kweku watched her, something stirred in him, something small, soft, and uncomfortable, maybe love, maybe guilt, he didn't know yet. That night, he dreamt a third time, only this time, the voice was louder. "You will borrow what you refuse to give." He didn't understand it, not yet. But the story that followed would make the entire city remember his name forever. The city glowed that evening. Headlights stretched like fireflies across the highway, and every restaurant window flickered with laughter. Inside one of those cafes sat Ama and Kweku, two people who looked like a couple in love, but whose hearts were keeping different accounts. Ama stirred her drink absent-mindedly, tracing small circles with her spoon. Kweku's eyes, however, weren't on her. They were fixed on the receipt tucked beneath the sugar jar, as if numbers whispered secrets only he could hear. "You know," he said casually, "they charge for extra sugar here. Can you imagine? 3 cubes for free, the rest is 50 pesos each. Wasteful world." Ama smiled faintly. She was used to it now, the endless arithmetic that ruled his tongue. When she first met him, she thought his precision was admirable. Now it felt like a wall she could not climb. Their love blossomed not through grand gestures but through routine. Kweku walked her to the bus stop every evening, timing it so precisely that he could catch his own bus immediately after, no extra fare. He'd call her during his office breaks because calls after 6 p.m. cost more. When she mentioned liking shawarma, he found a small kiosk that sold discount Thursdays. Yet Ama told her friends, "He's thoughtful, he plans everything." They nodded politely, but one friend, Efwa, whispered, "He plans love like an accountant plans tax evasion." Ama laughed it off. Love makes excuses where logic builds fences. Kweku's texts came like rationed water, short, timed, and carefully measured. "Kweku, morning. Eat breakfast. Ama, you too." "Kweku, I already did. Toast from yesterday, still fresh." He often bragged about his minimalist lifestyle. "Ama, rich people don't waste. Even Dangote started small." "But you're not Dangote," she teased. "Exactly. That's why I save more." Sometimes she wanted to argue. Other times she pitied him, a man imprisoned by his own fear of lack. Ama's birthday arrived in June, bright and warm. Her co-workers decorated her desk with balloons. She hoped Kweku had planned something small, maybe dinner, a cake, anything thoughtful. That evening he showed up at her gate carrying a single sachet of yogurt. "Happy birthday, my love," he said proudly. "Ah, is that for me?" "Yes. Yogurt is healthy, and you know I care about your well-being." She smiled weakly and took it. Her neighbors peeked from their balconies, whispering. In that moment, Ama's heart broke, not because of the gift, but because he truly believed it was enough. 3 months later, Kweku invited her to dinner at a rooftop bar, the fanciest place he'd ever been. Ama's heart lifted. Maybe this was change. Maybe the man she loved was learning. But what she didn't know was that the restaurant had a happy hour. Buy one drink, get one free. Halfway through the meal, Kweku cleared his throat. He reached into his pocket, knelt slightly, careful not to touch the tiled floor, and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver ring, borrowed from his cousin who sold accessories downtown. "Ama Mensa," he said, voice trembling with a mix of pride and calculation. "Will you marry me?" Ama gasped. "Yes, Kweku, I will." Applause rippled across the room. Kweku smiled, partly from love, partly because the proposal had cost nothing but courage. That night he posted on Facebook, "When a man plans well, even heaven agrees. #engaged, #smartlove." News of the engagement reached Ama's family in Kumasi. Her father, a retired civil servant known for his wisdom, sent the traditional list, modest but symbolic. It read, "Ta 10 tubers of yam, E 2 kegs of palm wine, A 2 goats, ats 10,000 cows and cash for the family blessing." Kweku read it and nearly fainted. 10,000? For what? They're not selling a car. Ama tried to soothe him. "It's tradition, my love. Every family does it. Tradition is expensive," he muttered. That night he opened his budgeting app and stared at the numbers. He had the money, plenty of it, but the thought of parting with it made his chest tighten. He paced the room until midnight, then sent Ama a message. "Babe, I've been thinking. Why don't we handle things wisely? We're building our future together. You have some savings, right? We could borrow from that and replace it after the wedding." Ama hesitated. "You mean, use my dowry money?" "Our dowry money," he corrected. "We're already one." Her heart softened. She wanted peace, not argument. After all, wasn't marriage about teamwork? 2 days later she transferred the money, see at you 10,000, straight to his account. Kweku became a new man, or so it seemed. He moved quickly, renting a hall, printing elegant invitations, and boasting to friends that he was finally doing things big. He posted sneak peeks online. Ethiosis 2025, When Love Meets Vision. But behind the scenes, he negotiated every cost ruthlessly. He convinced the caterer to reduce portions, claiming half the guests were vegetarians. He told the DJ, "Play from your phone, no need for all that equipment." He even planned to reuse an old wedding suit slightly altered. Amma watched, confused yet grateful. For once, he looked happy spending. She didn't know it was because none of it felt like his own money. As the day approached, posters of their smiling faces appeared online. Family arrived from across the country. The city buzzed with excitement. Kweku strutted around like royalty, giving interviews to bloggers. "Love doesn't need to be loud," he told one, "just organized." Amma's father felt proud. He didn't know the truth yet, that every flower, every table, every drop of champagne was funded by his daughter's dowry. On the eve of the wedding, Amma lay awake. Something gnawed at her conscience. She whispered a prayer. "Lord, I trust this love. Please don't let my obedience become my regret." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, as if heaven already knew tomorrow would not go as planned. Morning came with sunshine, music, and laughter. Guests filled the hall, phones flashing, women in colorful lace, men in crisp agbadas. Kweku arrived in a hired Benz, borrowed from his boss's cousin, stepping out like a prince. When Amma entered, the crowd gasped. She was radiant, her smile trembling with emotion. The ceremony flowed perfectly, until the time came for the presentation of the bride price. Kweku handed the envelope proudly to Amma's father. The old man opened it, smiling, until his eyes caught something strange. The envelope carried Amma's own bank logo and the same personalized deposit slip she used. Her father frowned, checking again. "Amma," he said slowly, "why is your name on this transaction receipt?" The hall fell silent. The MC's microphone buzzed. Amma froze. Kweku's smile collapsed. "Explain," her father demanded. "Sir, it's a misunderstanding," Kweku stammered. "Whose money is this?" "Oh, ours, sir." "Ours!" Gasps swept through the guests. Someone whispered he used the bride's money for the bride price. Another guest started recording. Amma burst into tears. Her father trembled with rage. "You borrowed her dowry to pay her bride price?" The crowd erupted. Within hours, the video hit social media. Captions screamed, "The groom who borrowed his bride's dowry. Accra's most shameful wedding." Kweku's colleagues mocked him in office group chats. Memes flooded timelines. Pictures of him holding calculators at the altar. Captions reading "Love on credit." His employer suspended him for bringing disrepute to the company. Sponsors of his side hustles withdrew partnerships. In 1 week, the man who once counted coins was now counting apologies. Amma returned to her parents' home, humiliated. For days, reporters camped outside her gate. She ignored them, but inside her heart was torn between anger and pity. Kweku hid in his apartment, curtains drawn. The silence that once comforted him now mocked him. He hadn't lost money. He'd lost dignity. He replayed the moment in his head 1,000 times. The crowd's laughter, Amma's tears, the sound of his own excuses. He realized something for the first time. That stinginess was not saving, it was fear disguised as wisdom. And that night, for once, he didn't dream of counting coins, he dreamed of giving. The sun had barely risen over Accra when the city woke to laughter. Not the kind born from joy, but the mocking kind, sharp as gossip and fast as Wi-Fi. The headline spread across every phone screen before Kweku even opened his eyes. The groom who borrowed his bride's dowry, his picture, captured mid-stammer, hands trembling at the altar, was everywhere. Someone had zoomed in on Amma's tear-streaked face. Another had added meme text, "When your husband pays bride price with your own salary." The video had gone viral overnight. By morning, radio hosts were joking about it, bloggers were reenacting it, and TikTok creators were lip-syncing the confrontation like it was a comedy skit. Kweku's phone vibrated endlessly. Bro, is this you for real? EI! So love is now a loan application? Man, at least she said yes before the bank alert. He threw the phone against the wall. It cracked, a small act of spending he hadn't planned for. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor tiles like they owed him an explanation. He had survived many things: hunger, insults, poverty, but not public shame. On Twitter, someone had written, "Never trust a man who calculates love like tax." Another replied, "He should have married his calculator. At least that one wouldn't expect bride price." By noon, his manager called him into the office. "Kweku, this scandal has reached clients. They think it reflects on our integrity. But sir, my private life is now public embarrassment. Take 2 weeks off, maybe forever." He left the office like a ghost, colleagues whispering as he passed. Even the cleaner looked at him with pity. At a street junction, a trotro driver shouted, "Ah, groom of shame, enter free, maybe you'll borrow the fare later." Laughter followed him down the road. He locked himself inside his apartment for days. Curtains closed, lights off. His once prized fridge, half empty as usual, now hummed louder than his thoughts. He replayed everything in his mind: Amma's face, her father's voice, the guests gasping. He wanted to justify it, to believe he'd done it out of love, not greed, but even his reflection in the mirror refused to agree. He whispered, "I only borrowed it. I would have paid her back." But a part of him knew stinginess had turned love into transaction. The same mind that once calculated every cedi could no longer measure the weight of his guilt. Across town, Amma stayed silent. She refused interviews, ignored calls, and avoided social media. Her mother prayed for her heart. Her father remained angry but quietly proud that the truth came out before it was too late. At night, she lay awake remembering Kweku's voice, how confident he had sounded when he said, "We're already one." Now she realized he hadn't meant unity. He had meant ownership. Posters that once showed their smiling faces for Kweku Owusu's 2025 had become jokes in WhatsApp groups. At bars, men laughed. He's the reason women now ask for proof of payment before saying yes. Even pastors mentioned him in sermons about greed. In traffic, Kweku overheard two hawkers. That stingy man should start a bank, borrowed love savings and loan. He pulled his cap lower and kept walking. That night, the city rain fell heavy, washing dust from rooftops but not shame from his heart. Kweku sat by his window, watching lightning flash across the skyline. For the first time in years he felt poor. Not in money, but in spirit. He looked at the cracked phone again and saw Amma's picture, still his wallpaper. Her smile in that photo had once made him feel proud. Now it accused him silently. He whispered into the dark, "Amma, I'm sorry." Then, as if the universe answered, a knock echoed on his door. It was Auntie Mabel, his landlord. She carried a flashlight and a bowl of rice. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "You've not eaten for days. Take this." He stared, surprised. "I'll pay you later." "Hey! Keep your money, beg. Sometimes people need kindness more than cetus." He blinked hard. No one had ever said that to him before. After she left, he sat staring at the bowl. Each grain of rice felt like mercy. He ate slowly, tears falling between bites. The next morning, he opened the window for the first time. The sun poured in like forgiveness. He grabbed a notepad, the same one he used for budgets, and wrote, "Things I never paid for but should have. 1. Amma's trust. 2. My parents' prayers. 3. Auntie Mabel's patience. 4. God's mercy." He stared at the list until his eyes blurred. For a man who once valued cents, he was finally counting what truly mattered. Weeks passed. Slowly, he started leaving the house. He found a small community outreach group that fed street kids every Saturday. He offered to help with bookkeeping, but ended up helping serve food instead. The first day, when a child thanked him for a plate of rice, something broke open inside him. He felt lighter, almost free. He began volunteering regularly. He fixed broken chairs at the center, bought biscuits for the kids, and even donated his old suits. Word spread quietly, not of mockery this time, but of change. One afternoon, Ama's friend Efwa showed her a video. "Look, isn't this your ex?" It was Kweku serving food to street children, smiling shyly as they sang his name. Ama felt a twist of emotion, pain, disbelief, maybe hope. She put the phone down and whispered, "People can change, if they're hungry enough." 2 months later, Kweku asked to meet her. She agreed, cautiously. They met at a small cafe by the seaside, far from the noise of the city. He arrived first, carrying nothing but sincerity, no calculator, no excuses. When Ama entered, he stood, awkward but genuine. "You look well," he said, "and you look human again," she replied softly. They sat in silence for a moment before he spoke. "Ama, I came with nothing, because that's what I gave you, nothing. You deserved better. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to return your honor." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was CLY 15,000, more than what he took. "I sold my motorbike. It's not enough, but it's a start." Ama stared at him, eyes glistening. "It was never about the money, Kweku. I know. That's why I finally learned how to spend it right." They smiled faintly, not as lovers rekindling, but as two people who finally understood the cost of pride. That night, Kweku walked home through the quiet streets of Accra. The city lights shimmered on puddles, each reflection like a second chance. He whispered to himself, "A man who borrows love can never own peace, but a man who gives even once begins to live." As he disappeared into the city's heartbeat, a new story began, not of shame, but redemption. Accra moved on quickly. The memes faded, the gossip turned to new scandals, and life continued to roar through its traffic-choked streets. But for Kweku Owusu, time no longer moved fast. It slowed, teaching him to breathe, listen, and look beyond himself. He had lost everything that once made him proud. The job, the followers, the fake prestige. But in their place he found something strange, peace. He began each morning sweeping the narrow corridor outside his flat, greeting neighbors he once ignored. Auntie Mabel would shake her head and smile. So even stingy men can change, eh?" "Not stingy anymore, Auntie," he'd reply, "just learning to live right." Every Wednesday he visited the same street corner where hawkers gathered. He bought 20 loaves of bread from a woman named Akua Giesiwa and handed them out to bus conductors, beggars, and security guards. At first they refused. "Ah, Kweku Owusu? Giving free bread? Take it," he'd insist. No hidden charges, each thank you felt like sunlight. It wasn't charity, it was freedom, a quiet rebellion against the selfishness that had once imprisoned him. He realized giving didn't reduce him. It restored him. Through a friend from the outreach program, he joined an NGO that helped small market women manage their finances. Ironically, his talent with numbers now served a better purpose. He taught widows how to save without fear, how to invest without greed. Money should move like water, he told them, drawing circles on a chalkboard. When it stops flowing, it starts to stink. The women clapped. For once, his calculations healed instead of hoarded. At month's end, his new boss called him in. "We like what you're doing, Kweku. You turned your shame into wisdom. We're promoting you to coordinator." He blinked, speechless. For years he had begged money to stay. Now it came to him naturally, attracted to purpose. Meanwhile, Ama had grown into a voice for young women in finance. She hosted workshops titled Love, Money, and Boundaries. Her story became a lesson for others, though she never mentioned names. When asked if she still spoke to the man who once wronged her, she smiled. Forgiveness isn't about returning, it's about releasing. Yet somewhere deep inside, she still wished him well. Months later, the NGO organized a massive outreach at Independence Square. Free meals, medical care, and music. Kweku was in charge of logistics. As the crowd grew, he noticed a familiar figure helping serve water. Ama. Their eyes met across the chaos of people. Neither moved for a moment. The world felt silent. Then Ama smiled. Small, genuine, forgiving. He walked over slowly. "You came," he said. "I heard they needed volunteers. I didn't know you'd be leading." Life's funny like that. They worked side by side that afternoon, laughing with the children, handing out food, when one little boy tugged Kweku's sleeve and said, "Uncle, thank you for feeding us." Kweku's voice trembled. "No, son, thank you for letting me." Amma looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man who had shamed her, but the man he could have been all along. When the event ended, the sun melted into gold over the ocean. They sat on the seawall, feet dangling above the waves. "You repaid the money," Amma said quietly. "But you didn't owe me that. I owed myself honesty," he replied. "Do you still fear spending?" "Not anymore. I fear withholding," she nodded. "Then you've learned." He smiled. "If I could go back, I'd buy you 100 roses, every color." "It's all right," she said. "You're giving better things now." The wind carried their laughter out to sea, soft, healed, human. Kweku's life slowly filled with meaning. He rented a small office for community projects, painted on its door the words, "Give first, count later." Children from the neighborhood stopped by after school for lessons. He sponsored one girl's education quietly, the daughter of a hawker he once argued with over price. He visited Auntie Mabel weekly, fixing small repairs without charge. Every gesture, every smile he gave away became a coin returned to his soul. One night, he dreamt again, but not of coins or bride prices. He dreamt of a long table filled with people eating, laughing, and passing food down to him. No one took more than they needed. No one kept less than they deserved. When he woke, he whispered, "At last, I'm rich." Months later, a journalist from a local paper interviewed him for a feature on men who turned their lives around. "So, Mr. Owusu," she asked, "what's your secret to change?" "Simple," he said, smiling. "Once upon a time, I borrowed my bride's dowry. Now, I borrow God's grace daily and pay it forward." The story trended again, but this time not as a scandal. It was titled, "The Man Who Learned to Give." Underneath, comments flowed. People really can change. Forgiveness is richer than money. And somewhere in the comment section, Amma wrote simply, "He finally learned how to love. They said love makes a man generous, but sometimes shame must first empty the heart before generosity can enter." In the city that once laughed at him, Kweku Owusu became a symbol of grace, proof that even the stingiest heart can learn to give. Because in the end, money is measured in cedis, but true wealth is counted in compassion. In a world where love is measured by price tags and pride wears designer clothes, one man learned that the greatest wealth is not in the wallet, but in the heart that gives. They mocked him, called him stingy, foolish, even cursed. But in his fall, he discovered the truth most men never find, that generosity is not about how much you have, but how much you're willing to share. Kweku Owusu borrowed his bride's dowry and paid with his pride. Yet in losing everything, he found himself, and now, when the city speaks of him, they don't remember the man who borrowed. They remember the man who gave. Because life will test every heart. Some fail through greed, others through fear. But those who learn to give will never go hungry again. This was the story of the groom who borrowed his bride's dowry, a reminder that in the marketplace of love, true currency is kindness. Give first, count later,